generally agree about how one does that and how one should get better at doing that, and what are these abstractions really for. And yeah, I can talk about the abstractions, and I have an opinion, and I'm not going to kowtow my opinion to what someone says my opinion should be just because they're saying it. But at the end of the day, what's the real practical consequence? A lot of times I feel that way, which is why I think that's one of the things that you and I have kind of agreed on in general, is that a lot of disagreement is fake. And that
can we meaningfully disagree and be friends?
Yeah. And that's a good question. That's a very Luke question, and I think I understand the purpose of the question. But then there are some times where it doesn't feel that way. There are times where it feels real, and times where it feels like it matters. So I don't know. I mean, it really, like Gavin can really insist, for example. And I've interacted with him more than you have, and I've had some amount of personal interaction with him, although I will not, I don't try and spill beans on private conversations or stuff like that. But what?
That's my job.
That's your job. But no, even in public, like right in public, he will say, we worship Jesus, we worship the Trinity, and if you're not worshiping the Trinity, then you're not worshiping the true God, and you're not a Christian, and that's why the Trinity is a first order matter, right? And honestly, he seems to have been looking for and finding reasons why the Trinity should be a first order doctrine, since I kind of pointed out that he didn't have any good reason why it was. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, if you suddenly start making your church services all we worship Jesus, and if you can't worship Jesus, you're not going to enjoy or be able to participate in this thing. Well, suddenly that does start to feel like a real difference, and the abstract has been forced into the practical in a weird kind of way.
Yeah. Well, and so what I would add to that is I would say what's funny is, like, at the propositional level, I agree with Gavin. And I do think it is a foundational thing. Mm-hmm. I just would add in the Peter Rollins thing is that we don't know what we really believe. Mm-hmm. We're working that out. That's part of working out our own salvation with fear and trembling. This is why I talk about egoic knowledge. We have an egoic understanding of what we think we believe, where we attach our identity to our consciously aware propositions. Mm-hmm. But is that what you really believe? Well, I don't know. That's why we go to psychotherapy. That's why we go to therapists. That's why do I do the things that I do, the things I don't want to do, and the things that I don't want to do, I find myself continually doing. Oh, wretched man that I am. We are not integrated. And that probably goes to why I'm not an anti-propositionalist, because I do think these things matter. I don't think things happen. I would bring in kind of Charles Williams' book, The Descent of the Dove, that the whole purpose of the church is reconciliation. So that every time that there are these schisms and these bad things that happen in these falls, both like cosmically, big picture, and fractally, all these different falls, selling Joseph into slavery, Jacob and Esau schisming, all these bad things that happen, the point of that is, if in my frame, the whole point of creation is to be like God, and that means becoming one who forgives, then all these falls are necessary. They're absolutely necessary, because those are the training seeds that's the soil that turns us into the kind of people that we're meant to be, which is like God, one who forgives his enemies. Mm-hmm. And you can't get that without even.
I'm sorry, where did God forgive his enemies?
Where did God forgive his enemies?
I remember Jesus doing that. I'm still trying to remember where.
Well, I mean, isn't that the verse that, like, while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us? But like that's on the behest of God, or even as his emissary. And so, and being, the exact imprint of his nature, the icon of God. I get your equivocation on God and God as adjective as well.
Because in a certain sense, God doesn't. You can be an enemy of God, but God doesn't have an enemy. I think is
no, and that's the Avett Brothers song. Like, I have no enemies. That whole their big song, which is like that refrain at the end, is when you forgive people, you don't have enemies anymore, even if they're living in opposition to you, and that therein is the grace that woos them. And so
I remember when the Avett Brothers used to be good.
They're not anymore.
I don't think so. But yeah,
Hello.
Sorry if I was interrupting something. It's just I saw you were live, so I
Got permission from me. You weren't interrupting anything.
Okay.
How's school?
Good. I actually earlier today I had a test for my finance class and I got a 92.67.
Nice.
So
finance. Why are you taking a finance class?
Because I'm going to become an actuary.
You are thinking about becoming an actuary. Wow.
Didn't I tell you that before?
Well, yes, we did discuss it, and I did recommend that you look into taking the actuarial exam, but I didn't know that you had decided to do so.
Okay. Yeah, I did. Sorry if there's any background noise. I'll pause my. I was actually just watching The Sopranos.
Sopranos.
Yeah, the believe it or not, the person who plays Meadow Soprano, Jamie Lynn Singer, is actually Jewish.
I could believe it. I
Oh.
actually do not keep track on who's Jewish or not Jewish very well.
So how have you been doing?
I'm doing okay. Keeping busy. Life is busier when you have a little puppy.
Yeah, I didn't know you got a little puppy.
I have a little puppy. That's who's squeaking. He has
What's
his squeak toy, which he really likes.
What's your name?
His name is Lucky.
Lucky.
Yes.
And so is Shadow, is that a she or a he?
Shadow is female. Lucky is male, and Happy is female.
Okay. Who's Happy? Is that another dog you have?
Yes, Happy's my dog that I've had for years.
Okay, I only remember Shadow. See, I keep as well, you know, which cat you have, which cats and dogs you have, as well as you keep up with who's Jewish or not.
Apparently.
So have you been thinking about anything interesting recently?
Nope. Mostly just keeping busy with stuff.
May I bring up a topic completely out of the blue?
Sure. What's your
So,
topic completely?
Recently, I posted in Discord. There was a question whether or not anyone has read Douglas Hofstadter, the book Gödel, Escher, Bach, and I was curious if you've read it.
Never heard of him. Have no idea what it's about.
Okay, because basically, so I haven't read it, but I've heard that Hofstadter has this idea that the mind is a self-referential system, and I heard that Roger Penrose criticized it based on Gödel's incompleteness theorem.
I wouldn't know, but the idea that your mind is contained within your skull is something a lot of people seem to believe that has no basis in fact.
Well, there's that, but it's even when I see self-referential system, I don't think it means. I mean, I haven't read the book, so I don't know exactly what it means. But I think it means that the concepts in your mind self-refer to each other, but as opposed to it just being in your mind, like your mind being in your brain.
It sounds very much like he has some sort of Cartesian dualism going on, which is sad for him if it's true, but I have no idea.
Yeah. Kirk does not have amnesia. Young God, where does that come from? Does Young God just say things?
Actually, usually when John God says things, they're pretty relevant. He's a pretty sharp guy. A lot of times, it's just such a deep cut that I don't get it. But
So what are you eating?
cheese, sandwich.
Yeah. Also, I looked in your Discord and I actually found out that you had previously posted something about Kabbalah and quantum physics by some rabbi named Hyman Schipper.
I did.
I looked in the archives and apparently a couple years ago you did.
I do not recall this.
Okay, that's interesting because if you did, because I thought you said that you were not, generally speaking, a big fan of trying to take scientific concepts and then fit them into a Torah frame directly.
So I myself wrote something about the metric and Kabbalah, and I started with a very long preamble warning against trying to mix the two. So, not that I know where to find this thing I wrote. Maybe I can find it. Let me see. It's on Facebook, but it's always hard for me to find it because it was I wrote it back when Facebook had notes, and Facebook doesn't do notes anymore. Oh, I know where I have it. Hold on. Because I sent it to someone in a DM a while back.
Are you going to post it in Discord?
Nope. I am just going to show you.
Okay.
The metric tensor and the Kabbalah. And I am going to afflict you with my little introduction here, although I will hopefully be able to read my little introduction here. Introduction. Due to the severe clash we have seen over the years between people who consider themselves to be scientists and people who consider themselves to be theologians, we have an intense derangement of both fields. I am not going to describe the derangement in detail since it has been discussed at length in many places. I simply want to include several words of caution so that this article should not become some sort of stumbling block. Epistemology is the knowledge of how we know things. There are many methods to gain knowledge. The method we most often claim to rely upon is an epistemology based on empiricism and reason. The study of the philosophy of science is rich and deserves independent study. A different method we rely upon is some form of religious revelation. Many people have various preferences for the interaction between these two methods. The intellectual battle has been fierce, and the greatest casualty has been the derangement of both into some bulwark against the other. This article is not an exercise in epistemology. It is an exercise in comparison. Whether you view scientific knowledge as the only valid epistemology, invalid itself, complementary to revelation, or antagonistic is completely irrelevant here. This article is a comparison of the results of the methods. I am no physicist, and I make no claim whatsoever to contributing to any knowledge at all to physics. What discussion of physics I include is merely an expression of the knowledge that has already been obtained and agreed upon by physicists. If you have any question or quarrel with the physics, take it up with the physicists. To the extent that anything I say here about physics contradicts physics as understood by orthodox physicists, I apologize and recant. Similarly, I am no Kabbalist. I am merely setting out Kabbalistic concepts as have been taught to me from various sources. There is no attempt, heaven forbid, at restructuring the Kabbalah to fit any model of physics whatsoever. To the extent that anything I say here about the Kabbalah contradicts the teachings of the Arizal, his students, the Baal Shem Tov, or his students, I repent and pray forgiveness. I would illustrate what this article attempts with two examples of similar yet less complicated exercise. Biologists teach us that every cell in the human body, with few exceptions, includes a genetic code which describes us each as a person. Similarly, the Kabbalists teach that every part of a human is imbued with the essence of that human in a uniform manner. While the coincidence of these two teachings is of interest, there's no implication that either the biological or the Kabbalistic understanding in either case should pervert the other. If certain cells do not have the genetic code, that has no implications on the Kabbalistic understanding. Similarly, if the Kabbalistic understanding of some part of the human should imply that the essence would not be imbued in the same way as the rest, that has no implications for the biologist. In a similar manner, the Kabbalists teach of two forms of light which emanate from the infinite blessed one. One light is a transcendent and encompassing light which does not interact with this world. The other is an immanent and pervasive light, which imparts its unique energy to all that are able to receive it. Physicists teach us that some radiation is similarly in the background and does not interact with the material world we perceive easily. Other forms of radiation does interact in certain ways, allowing us to feel its warmth or see its effects. It would be foolish to pervert one understanding with the other, yet it is a useful exercise to the human to understand aspects of each by way of analogy. Analogies fail where they fail. Our understanding of science fails where it fails. Our understanding of revelation fails where it fails. As the Tikkun Zohar teaches, no thought can grasp you. This interaction is treated at length in many other forms by many wise people. I simply warn against the particular danger that Rabbi Soloveitchik notes in his masterpiece Halachic Man, the individual who frees himself from the rational principle and who casts off the yoke of objective thought will in the end turn destructive and lay waste the entire created order. That was just the introduction to what I wrote, and it took up half of it because I very much oppose people saying stupid things.
I think that shows a great level of intellectual humility you have.
Why, thank you.
Yeah, no, I don't think anyone in the Orthodox Jewish world would disagree with that. And I certainly wouldn't disagree with that. I mean, maybe, I don't know. But to me, that just sounds like mainstream Orthodox Jewish theology. The idea that, well, you can make analogies, but it's not like you're not going to go to, a lab and find, a Sefirot, right? One of the Sefirot. So I don't think, yeah, anyone would disagree with that.
I hope not. I mean, it is what it is.
Also, I've been a little bit more active in Discord, and if it's not too much to ask, do you know when I can eventually get rid of my Patayim status?
When you earn your way out of your Patayim status.
And what criteria would have to be met at that point?
Well, how did you get to your Patayim status?
If my memory serves me correctly, I muted either Sally or Sandy or both about a year, about 5, I forgot, some amount of months ago.
Yes, to be quite clear, you were disrespectful to two people who I have warned people explicitly over and over again, do not be disrespectful to these two people.
Yeah, and I'm sorry about that. And I just don't know what at this point I could do to get out of my Patayim status.
It would probably be something along the lines of demonstrating your capacity to be respectful to people, so that I can feel confident that you would be respectful to the people who deserve respect.
Okay. I mean, I think on these live streams I'm generally respectful, at least compared to how I used to be.
You are definitely much better off than you used to be. And giving you that Patayim status seems to have worked in trying to help you to be more respectful of people you should be respectful to.
Yeah. So, have you been learning about any great psychologists recently in your school?
Great psychologists? Are you kidding?
Yeah, Skinner or James or you know.
No, honestly, I'm taking 2 classes right now. One of them is complete and utter foolishness with no relevant content to anything whatsoever. And I'm not joking about that. And the other, we've been practicing stuff, which is good, and which is why I like taking that class. But my teacher is a huge fan of Gabor Mate. Not my favorite.
I don't know much about Gabor Mate. Isn't he the father of the guy who was accused of being a Syrian asset on the Young Turks?
Yes, he is the father of Aaron Mate. Gabor Mate is a psychiatrist and was a pioneer in the harm reduction movement regarding substance abuse.
I mean, that sounds like a fair enough theory or a psychological tradition.
Well, I mean, he had a point. It was not the worst of points. But he is who he is.
Yeah.
Yad, basically the last thing I am going to do is subject my blood pressure to something produced by Sid Blumenthal's stepson.
I don't know who Sid Blumenthal is. I know Max Blumenthal. I don't know who Sid Blumenthal is.
Sid Blumenthal is Max Blumenthal's stepfather.
Oh, is he some sort of left wing crank?
No, he's actually a very important and powerful member of the Democratic Party.
Okay. Because the way you framed it, it sounded like you were criticizing Sid Blumenthal.
Oh yes, I am not a fan of Sid Blumenthal.
I mean, someone can be a Democrat. And I think there are sane Democrats out there. I don't know if Sid Blumenthal is because I don't know Sid Blumenthal, but Jonathan Haidt, Eric Weinstein, there seem to
It
be
is
some.
possible to be a sane person who is a Democrat. It is not possible to be a sane and not evil person who is a member of the Democratic Party. Young God, I have no idea what's going on with
You still
your
say Kaddish?
comments. No, your comment for some reason. Oh, I guess because your comment has a whatchamacallit in it. It's being no, this got marked too. Some of your comments are getting marked by some sort of here. I am going to take a picture and so that you can see. Let's see. How do I make this picture? I am going to post it on Discord. There, I posted it on Discord. I don't know why those comments have a question mark next to them. That's very strange.
Yeah. Is the YouTube gods acting up?
No, this is StreamYard, not YouTube, I think, as far as I know.
Okay.
I could look on YouTube and see if anything's going on. No, it doesn't seem to be a YouTube thing. Yeah, I don't think that's it, Jules. By the way, long time no see. How you doing?
Does Jules ever come on?
Jules has come on a couple of times.
Yeah. So so you said you were taking one class which you thought was not of value because the teacher was a fan of Gabor Mate, and then you said you were
No.
taking... Okay.
I said I'm taking one class which is not of value because it has no value, and another class which is of value despite the fact the teacher is a fan of Gabor Mate.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know too much about substance abuse specifically, but in terms of psychopathology, have any of your teachers brought up Jasper's theory of psychopathology?
The what?
Jasper's theory, Carl Jaspers.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh, he was a German psychiatrist and philosopher who taught Hannah Arendt with Heidegger, and unlike Heidegger, he actually refused to be a Nazi, which was pretty
How do you
commendable.
spell Jaspers?
Jaspers.
How do you spell Corey?
Karl. I'm surprised if you haven't come across him before, because I thought he was very influential in psychopathology.
Carl Jaspers was a German-Swiss psychiatrist and philosopher who had a strong influence on modern theology, psychiatry, and philosophy. His 1913 work, General Psychopathology, influenced many later diagnostic criteria and argued for a distinction between primary and secondary delusions. After being trained and practicing psychiatry, Jaspers turned to philosophical inquiry and attempted to develop an innovative philosophical system. He was often viewed as a major exponent of existentialism, poor guy, in Germany, though he did not accept the label. Heidelberg University, medical doctorate from Heidelberg University, Karl Bonhoeffer, Max Weber, Jaspers was considered to have a Jewish taint due to his Jewish wife Gertrude Meyer, and was forced to retire from teaching. In 1948, Jaspers moved to the University of Basel in Switzerland. Died at age 90 in 1969. Contributions to psychiatry. Jasper's dissatisfaction with the popular understanding of mental illness led him to question both the diagnostic criteria and methods of clinical psychiatry. He published a paper in 1910 in which he addressed the problem of whether paranoia was an aspect of personality or the result of biological changes. Although it did not broach new ideas, this article introduced a rather unusual method of study, at least according to the norms then prevalent. Not unlike Freud, Jaspers studied patients in detail, giving biographical information about the patients, as well as notes on how the patients themselves felt about their symptoms. This has become known as the biographical method, and now forms a mainstay of psychiatric and, above all, psychotherapeutic practice. Jaspers set down his views on mental illness in a book which he published in 1913, General Psychopathology. This work has become a classic in the psychiatric literature, and many modern diagnostic criteria stem from ideas found within it. One of Jasper's central tenets was that psychiatrists should diagnose symptoms of mental illness, particularly of psychosis, by their form rather than by their content. Okay, yeah, I guess we do that. For example, in diagnosing a hallucination, it is more important to note that a person experiences visual phenomena when no sensory stimuli account for them than to note what the patient sees. What the patient sees is the content, but the discrepancy between visual perception and objective reality is the form. I mean, we do still talk about things like paranoia, delusions of grandeur, etc. So I don't think we do that completely. Jaspers thought that psychiatrists could diagnose delusions in the same way. He argued that clinicians should not consider a belief delusional based on the content of the belief, but only based on the way in which a patient holds such a belief. Jaspers also distinguished between primary and secondary delusions. He defined primary delusions as autochthonous, meaning that they arise without apparent cause, appearing incomprehensible in terms of a normal mental process. This is a slightly different use of the word autochthonous than the ordinary medical or sociological use as a synonym for indigenous. Secondary delusions, on the other hand, what he defined as those influenced by the person's background, current situation, or mental state. That sounds like a very silly distinction to me, since it is completely impossible for a human being to have thoughts which are not influenced by their background, current situation, or mental state. Jaspers considered primary delusions to be ultimately ununderstandable, since he believed no coherent reasoning process existed behind their formation. This view has caused some controversy, and the likes of R.D. Laing and Richard Bentall have criticized it, stressing that this stance can lead therapists into the complacency of assuming that because they do not understand the patient is deluded, and further investigation on the part of the therapist will have no effect. For instance, I don't even know how to say that name, argues that schizophrenic disordered speech may be understandable, just as Emil Kraepelin's dream speech is understandable. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like he made contributions to the way science psychiatry is investigated, but like that was a very, very long time ago, and we've moved on from there.
Yeah, I mean, the main thing is that I've heard that he influenced like existential therapy, and specifically, I've heard that his idea that we focus on the form and not the content of the belief is basically this, associated with his sort of influence from people like Kierkegaard, his Hasidism, which is basically, whether or not someone believes in God, for example, you can't judge them as illusion because that's the content of belief, but it should be the form, whether or not they're willing to subject their ideas to new evidence. It's sort of, it seems like sort of like a Popperian attitude of trying to like falsify your existing beliefs to see if they accord with reality.
Okay.
So,
I mean,
this,
this sounds completely divorced from empiricism, which I dislike. Jules says, I can't come on right now. I'm listening from work, but I'm doing good, just a little busy. Glad to hear it. I am hoping you're working in data science and you finished your master's degree. Kirk, your citations add more entropy to this universe, often do, yes. To return to the notion of a mind, I think that if you trained to be a human, all you need is a notion of here and now to have experience. You can just keep dreaming. I don't understand what you're saying, Adam. To return to the notion of mind, I think that if you trained to be a human, all you need is a notion of here and now to have experience. You can just keep dreaming. Yeah, I read that a second time and I still have no idea what it means. Yosef, why is Jacob reading Wikipedia the most broken site on earth? Because we only have the options that we have. The other option would be to ask Wikipedia, to ask Grok, and that might take a while. And Grok is even more broken in many ways than Wikipedia is. We're only waves, bro. Not sure what you mean, young God. Death is just loss of persistent reality. I would say death is the separation of components of your being, but that's me. Beyond that, you keep traveling between different scenes with props and people from your own experience. Yosef, we are stable vortices in the flow, Jan. Are we stable, though? Are we? Sleep is like black holes. A few seconds of experience correspond to hours in our world. Maybe. Kirk, why don't you try to build your own ham radio? That could be a fun hobby.
I don't know what ham radio is.
Ham radio is an amateur radio. There are certain channels which you can get an amateur license to broadcast upon, which is what ham is, as opposed to commercial radio where you have to get a broadcast license and pay for your particular channels to broadcast upon. So if a man says his wife is an insectoid monster trying to eat his brain, you should consider the form of the delusion primarily. When we talk about people's delusions, we do care about the content, but we also care about the form. So if a person is having an auditory hallucination, right, then that's it doesn't matter what they are hearing. It matters that they are hearing something. And I'm not talking about tinnitus here. Although I wonder why we don't investigate tinnitus more. But I think you kind of have to do both. You need an amateur license in the US. Around here, you just broadcast with no assurance of availability in amateur frequencies. I think you have to at least have some training to broadcast on ham radio, but I'm not sure. David, do you broadcast on ham radio?
I do not.
Mm.
It's not a thing I do. Very unfortunate.
It is.
I could see Kirk getting big into it, though.
I don't think I would make a great ham radio host. I think I'm too young, and I think I need a little bit more life experience. We were just talking about pathology and Jaspers, but I don't know if you're interested in all that, David.
I was actually wondering a bizarre thing that I was thinking about earlier today, because of course I was. Jacob, I was wondering your thoughts on hysteria as actually not a bad classification and its treatment possibly not a bad treatment. Is because if estrogen levels, if increased estrogen levels do increase neurosis, then how is classifying depression as a form of hysteria incorrect? Your thoughts?
Okay. I think it is an absolute travesty that we have brought into the Cartesian dualism, where your mind is not affected by, and I mean, it truly is it truly is something that comes from ideological commitment, where people don't want your hormones, because if we were to say, yes, your hormones do affect how you act and what you do, then maybe we would have to recognize that maybe hormonal birth control does in fact affect how people act and how they live their lives.
And their mental health. Yeah. That's one of the worst things, is what it does for your mental health.
I still have not read this book, but I do own it.
Yeah. Well, and I wonder about the same. Wouldn't it be great if we actually classified rage within males as being like a male form of hysteria? Like, we have to come up with our own term.
I mean, roid rage exists.
Yeah. But that would be the general term for male aggression.
Honestly, I mean, what hysteria means right now is not uniquely related to, like, I generally these days, the only people I call hysterical are actually males. Like, anybody who's been following my argument with Tim on X for the past 3 days, I've been calling him hysterical because he has been hysterical. But and yes, hysterectomies are not very good mental health.
That's not what I was.
That's not what you meant.
To.
Okay,
because I'm thinking of the feather duster.
What's the feather duster?
There was a treatment for hysteria that mechanically originally was a feather duster.
Oh wow! Okay.
Do you know what I'm?
I am guessing, and I don't want more details.
And then such objects were rebranded in magazines as a personal massager.
Yes, I figured. That's where I assumed you were going.
But that was to help the doctor. It was invented to help the doctors with carpal tunnel after days of treating patients.
You are joking, please.
I am not even a little bit. Not that
wow.
Yeah, that's
okay. Not Christian. Yes. Yeah, apparently I was not aware of this. I did not want to be aware of this. I do not want to be aware of this. I am going to now pretend I was not made aware of this.
Okay, but within...
You have a dog?
Yes, I do.
Oh, I didn't know you had a dog.
Foxy, come over here. Come over here, Foxy. Come on. You're not in trouble. Get over here. Get over here, pup. Oh.
Aww.
Yeah.
My puppy's cuter, but your puppy's cute too.
She's a good puppy.
How big is she?
Smaller than you might think. But yeah.
Smaller than your huge cat?
Yeah. Somewhere around the same size, yeah. What's she, like 35 pounds?
Okay.
But within all seriousness, because I actually think a Jewish take on this might be far more complex, which is to what extent some issues are relating, as I have heard people say, is their problem. What they really need is a good stooping. To what extent that might be actually a solution to certain problems. What are your thoughts?
I do make jokes about vitamin D a little bit too much. And the discussion again we've been having on Twitter about porn. So here, let me see if I can find the stupid discussion about porn. Michael Sartori got me involved in a stupid discussion about porn on the internet. And if as soon as I find it, I'm looking. There we go. There we are. So somebody said something really stupid.
Of course.
Because it is, after all, wives are God's main weapon against porn addiction in men and need to be reminded of the dignity of that role. A thriving sex life is a tremendous spiritual help to a husband. And, well, I mean, he is a father of 8, but I don't know who this guy is. Did I respond? I did respond. Where's my response? I don't know if my response got through. My response was trying to use marital sex as a solution to sex addiction. It's not really an addiction; it's a compulsion. But sex compulsion is like trying to cure alcoholism with communion wine. I'm sure some people have tried it. It's pretty dumb. This is a whole other thing. I did say having a wife who is willing to work with you to deal with your porn addiction is helpful, but the way to do that is not to try to sate the addiction.
Yeah. But I do think there's a secondary issue, which is to what extent intimacy, let's just say that, to what extent people are hungry for intimacy, and that proper intimacy does solve a whole bunch of problems. Look, I was a single guy, and I was chaste. I'm okay with, I want to be sensitive about the conversations that we're having, but did certain aspects of marriage make my life easier and my mental health immediately better? Yes.
Right. And this is the thing. So a person who has an imbalanced life, right? Yeah. So we talk about the biopsychosocial, and more recently we've started talking about the biopsychosocial spiritual. But like somebody who has chronic back pain is likely to be depressed. The source of their depression, they may otherwise have reasons to be depressed. They may have, you can give that person antidepressants and that might make them less depressed. But the problem is they have chronic back pain, right?
Right.
So, you need to deal with the problems that people have. And the sexual urge is a normal, natural need that human beings have, both males and females. And frankly, I mean, did you read the Harper's article that's been going around about gooners? Be happy. It's lots of people have been depressed about it. I wasn't aware of what gooning was until recently.
Good for you.
Yes. Look, having a balanced life in all ways is good. and not having and having an imbalanced life, like I have said to including to my good friend Father Eric, who is a Roman Catholic priest, that voluntary celibacy is pretty much the most immoral life choice you can make in Orthodox Judaism.
Am I allowed?
Sure.
Okay. Explain yourself.
Well, I mean, voluntary celibacy is a complete, first of all, just like any other unwillingness to do the commandments with which we were commanded, right? The unwillingness to get married, have children, be fruitful and multiply, right? It's a sin. And deliberate sin is deliberate sin, right? So not acceptable whatsoever. But in a very real sense, I mean, you could be like, yeah, I'm not going to eat matzah on Passover, which is similar, but first of all, I mean, the Shulchan Aruch compares the unwillingness to have children to murder, right? Because you are in effect murdering your children, right? Yeah. And like the whole point of creation, right, is like there is no decision you can make in Judaism that is more like if you just sit there and say, I don't want to have children, I cannot think of anything that is more similar to idolatry in its complete negation of everything it means to be Jewish than to decide not to have children. Now, there are many reasons, and this is why I think this is what Jesus was addressing when he said there are those who do not have children for the sake of heaven, right? I think he was addressing the wrong idea, which is this means that anyone who doesn't have children for any reasons, right? Like, yes, did Jesus sin in not getting married and having children? Yes. Is it possible that there were good reasons why he could not fulfill the law? Quite possibly. Of course, there are those who say he did get married and have children, but you know, Jacob, I'm not one of those who say that he fulfilled the entirety of the law.
Jacob, I love our friendship. I'm a big fan of our friendship. I'm so glad that I could have this conversation that I think I could see myself getting kicked for even beginning to have. So
no, you can have. No, yeah. There's a reason I prod you, because I want you to have the discussion. Yes, I realize
maybe under the framework that we're discussing, we shouldn't talk about prodding right now. Kirk, what were you saying?
I was just going to ask, so does this mean that someone who's homosexual oriented should not have children?
No. Orthodox rabbis have been very clear that whether you are heterosexual or homosexual, you have an obligation to find someone to marry and have kids with.
Yeah.
Someone of the opposite sex to marry and have kids with.
That's the ones you can have kids with.
That should be very clear. Yeah.
No needs clarification.
Just in case anybody was wondering.
Yeah.
Exactly. As Kalanimus says, what does that have to do with being fruitful and multiplying?
Maybe for those individuals and emphasizing the multiplying and not the other part.
How very Greek, Michael says. Okay, so how did you want to push back? Feel free. don't worry about offending me. You
So
can't
I-
offend me.
So I have a friend
Yes.
who used to be the head of an organization in not the head. He was major in an organization where my buddy was gay and married a lesbian. And they since then he has become very affirming actually, because he's like, well, this is ineffective. But he's still married to that woman. Happily.
Okay.
And you can even look up this guy. His name's Brian Pengelly, because you can find him speaking. This was his business. He was brought in by churches and brought in by a couple, like the organization Exodus. He was major in that, and which then became New Directions. And
So there's a Mormon guy. I think I've posted his stuff. I've certainly showed it to some people, but he's Mormon. He's married to a woman. He has 3 kids, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm same-sex attracted, but I'm married to my wife, and we have 3 kids."
yeah, next question.
Yeah, next question.
But what's very interesting about my friend is my buddy now is very affirming. But I'm like, but in your life, the solution to a bunch of problems was actually, and then he found himself in this relationship, and neither of them want to end it, and they're happy together, and they have an intimate relationship. Yeah, it's fascinating to me to what extent do I have a friend. I'm going to use another example. I have a friend, the classic I have a friend, as Cassandra was saying. I have a friend, and they've been married for 20 years. They had 3 kids, and then trauma from her past has come up, and they could no longer be intimate, and they are ending their relationship, and the wife is identifying as a lesbian. Do I believe that the healing of her trauma would result in heterosexuality? And that yeah, I'll just end it there. And the answer for me is yes. And I don't know what to do with this. I'm very glad to be having a real conversation with you about it.
I will say something some people find quite shocking. Vast majority of people are not as strongly sexually oriented as society claims that all people are. Sexual orientation does change over a person's lifetime. And frankly, women tend to be far less sexually oriented than men.
Yeah.
There's like that. These should be non-controversial statements. Yes, Lucky is a golden doodle. He is in fact 3/4 doodle and 1/4 golden. And for anyone who knows enough Hebrew, his name is Lucky Paz. For those who know what Paz means, it means gold in Hebrew.
Beautiful.
What was I saying? I was saying, yeah. So and look, if conversion therapy worked, I know plenty of people who would use it, and I would be completely unopposed to using it if it worked. The problem with conversion therapy is it doesn't work. The problem is not that people are trying to make it work. The problem is it doesn't work.
I'm still trying to figure it out, though, because for my friend who is now affirming, who doesn't believe it worked, he's also married to a woman. And I need
without too much graphics, it is possible to have sex with someone and not have sex with that person, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Or it's
we don't need to get into it.
No, I do want to get into it because I think that it's important to actually discuss, because I feel that I've only ever been exposed to fake conversations about this and not real conversations.
You haven't been spending enough time with Jews.
No, okay. You don't know where I want to go with this.
Okay.
Because it's not what I'm saying. It's what I
Okay.
haven't said yet.
Go ahead, say what you haven't said yet.
It's personal though, Jacob. It's
Okay.
very personal.
I mean, we could have a private discussion. We don't have to have this in front of the entire internet.
I'm wondering if I could actually get my friend Brian to be part of a conversation. I think that might be
Okay.
interesting.
Yeah.
Is to what extent, because I was, running in evangelical circles and they were saying to stay away from certain material and stay away from lusting in your mind.
Yes.
But I was not convinced that an action within itself was evil, but the thoughts that accompanied an action. So if you could focus your mind on something non-lustful, that then it could potentially be non-sinful.
You've heard about those cults where they believe masturbation isn't wrong if you're thinking about Jesus while you're doing it?
Yeah, I've heard of that sort of stuff. But what if like you were like, I don't know, what if you were like thinking about lemons?
That's okay. So the difference between a paraphilia, right, and a sexual dysfunction is a paraphilia is when you have is when you are sexually attracted to something that is not sexual, right? Which is actually the real distinction between pedophilia and hebephilia, in case we wanted the algorithm to completely stop anybody from listening to this.
Oh, good.
Right?
I actually really appreciate that at this point.
Right. So, like, being sexually attracted to teenagers, right? That's not a paraphilia, because that is a sexual attraction. Now, it is a sociologically problematic one because we believe in sexual relationships that are healthy and consensual and mutual. Yes.
But what if you are not attracted to the thing and that's part of what you're doing?
You will become attracted to the thing if you do that long.
If you had done it, if you do it long enough.
Yeah, it's called classical conditioning. Yeah. Speaking of, my good friend who is a licensed clinical social worker and a forensic one who has dealt extensively with people who are sex offenders. Yes, teen attraction is hebephilia. And hebephilia is, for an adult, is something that our society disapproves of, right? But it's not a paraphilia. It's what we would consider an unhealthy relationship, right? Because of our ideas of consent and mutuality and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But pedophilia, right? That's just a straight up paraphilia, because like that is not a sexual thing. If I'm making myself understood, which I likely am not.
Kirk, how you doing? How you doing, Kirk? I just remembered Kirk's still here.
I'm listening.
Well, pederasty is actually worse than a sexual orientation or a lifestyle or a even a paraphilia, because it's not an actual. It is a sociological imposition, which I would call evil. Yeah. Who's Smug Sam? Oh.
Sam Tiedemann. We all know
his discussion with David Bentley Hart was interesting. Yeah,
we all know that Sam Tiedemann is known above everything else for being prideful, being an unreasonable, prideful person.
Because all of Claire's accusations are projection. Every last one.
Yeah. Have you ever met someone where you're like, I hope this person doesn't like me? I feel a little bit that way towards Claire. Like, I don't dislike them, but I kind of hope they dislike me a little. Just a little.
Yeah. How you doing, Denise? Denise is turning off her fan.
A good move.
There. I had to turn off all the fans.
Aha. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing all right. I noticed you were talking about, I lost that minute while I wrestled with a login, but you were talking about teen attraction and hebophilia.
Mm-hmm.
I got in a lot of trouble with the trolls, as if that matters, because I made some videos a while back trying to point out the difference between an adult male who is, finds a teenage girl attractive or who finds prepubescent children attractive. And I said how, it is wrong for the male to go after the young female, but if she is physically mature, then he is acting on natural instincts, irregardless of irresponsible. He might be a predator who's trying to find a weak-minded female, or he might be someone who just isn't thinking about the fact that she's too young. She might, in fact, I'll tell you the truth, we know about teenagers sneaking into bars with 21-year-old IDs. So you can't always blame the man in that case either. But there's another thing with hebophilia. Hebophilia is where it's not really a physically mature teenage that they're attracted to. I mean, some might be attracted to that because there's that mix of maturity and naivete. But the hemophiliac is attracted to someone whose physique is in that very short period of time between childhood and that adolescent period when they really are physically in a mixed up state. But the real issue with that particular attraction is that it is a very strong element in the actual organized formal religion that is Satanism. I mean, we know we have registered satanic churches, and they do have sexual practices. Anyone who looks into esoteric occult stuff and learns about Crowley and sex magic and rituals, they do have a certain thing that they're doing as hemophiliac. So it's very complicated when you get into that. It's not just a matter of a man feeling hormonally driven in a certain direction.
I have long said, and not everyone agrees with me, but I have long said that I think the reason we don't make this obvious distinction between teenagers and prepubescent children is because it is convenient for both the pedophiles and for the people who rape teenagers, because in one sense you can make it completely impossible to discuss the entire thing, and at the same time you can also get people to be more understanding, because it's like, man, shoot, no, it wasn't a 7-year-old, it was a 17-year-old. And it's like, dude, we need to be able to, and wasn't it Matt Damon who made this point and people lost their mind? He's like, we need to be able to, just like we distinguish between first degree and second degree murder, we need to be able to distinguish, like everybody knows what's first degree murder, what's second degree murder. Why can't we have first degree rape of children and second degree rape of children?
Well, the thing is, there's another thing, part of this too. The line of adulthood has moved because the social, well, I don't want to get into the political labels, but there's a certain tendency, and I think it's a left-wing tendency, that erases the line of passage. All the complicated, the elaborate ritual rites of passage into adulthood have pretty much been erased. And it's really like the feminists and the other far left wingers that did this. They really want to extend childhood forever, because childhood is pre-emancipation. To enslave humanity, you have to extend childhood. And so this whole question about sexual deviance is mixed up with this other thing that's going on, where some elements of society are trying to erase the sense of today you're a boy, tomorrow you're a man. And when you cross that line, there's a whole bunch of rituals about now you can no longer do this, you can no longer do that. I mean, the famous thing among the French used to be short pants. The day the boy got his first pair of long pants, he could no longer play boys' games. He was now a man. And then there's, even in the Bible, you got Paul saying you leave the things of childhood behind. But now you've got people want to indulge their inner child. You've got people throwing tantrums in retail stores because they're acting like 2-year-olds. You've even got a problem now in the public school system where the teachers are saying, look, we're getting first graders who are not toilet trained. And there's nothing mentally wrong with these kids. They simply have not been toilet trained. And they're erasing any concept of self-responsibility. And of course, sexual attraction, you have to be responsible for how you handle your attractions.
I have to say, though, on the internet, we tend to pay attention to a very, very, very small number of people who, you can find 1 or 2 people who are they-bees, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which, or like, I had heard of plenty of Jews who were like, yeah, circumcision, because of the intactivists, they're like, circumcision is genital mutilation, and
what you're doing is you're taking a baby that isn't even verbal yet, has no words.
Right.
You're subjecting that baby to sudden and unexpected pain in the genitals.
Yeah.
Only a week old, that baby has probably had almost nothing but pleasure for that first week. The parents are, yes, because, and then you do that, and what you do is you insert and you're a psychologist, you know this, the muscle memory pre-verbally takes the trauma in and cannot process it. So that gets buried. Then he grows through childhood, and he grows through childhood. When he hits adolescence and has his first hormonal birth of male sensations, what brings back is that pain. And he can never, that circumcised boy can never really unfold as a man.
No, Denise.
Yes, that's true. And that's why the Jews are the way they are. They enslave their baby boys with genital mutilation. And then the other Abrahamics, the Islam, they carry it further and they destroy the females as well.
Denise, you're being silly. First of all,
no, I'm not being silly.
Yeah,
you know this is true. It is castration.
Denise,
and it is designed to enslave the boy. And also, that means that circumcised boy can.
Okay, Denise, you're getting kind of silly, and this is my channel, and I am going to respond to the silly things that you said. Now,
go ahead.
First and foremost, most Americans are circumcised, and I didn't kick her actually, but I did bring down the sound and mute her for a second. But most Americans are circumcised. The idea that there's some sort of trauma from being 8 days old and this stuff, the intactivists talk about a lot, and it's complete bullshit. Children get shots all the time. Children feel uncomfortable all the time. This is absolutely not a thing. Remembering the trauma of your circumcision really, really is not a thing. And it's funny to me that Christians will say this when the fact is that their Bible quite clearly says Jesus was circumcised. Jesus was circumcised. So,
Yeah.
like, if you have a huge problem with circumcision, whatever.
That's something that the Virgin Mary had done to him.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
The entire
Yeah.
time with people who are Catholic, and especially, it's like.
And I have to say, one of the things. So, look, if you don't want to circumcise your kid, don't circumcise your kid. Like, if you're not Jewish,
Especially
I don't care at all.
All these goys getting into this conversation.
It's the intactivists online.
Yeah.
Like, you wouldn't believe the amount of money and time that is spent on anti-circumcision campaigns online. Now, I have known many adults who have gotten circumcised as adults, and they're the ones who completely negate most of these arguments about, oh, you're mutilating or whatever. But like, if you don't want to get circumcised, don't get circumcised. Like, I'm not going around trying to force somebody to get circumcised. But the reason I brought it up was because I thought, I have a particular cousin who is incredibly left-wing, and he had a baby boy, and I thought, oh, there's no way he's going to get the kid circumcised because he's so left-wing. But he did, because the internet is not real life, right? I have never met an intactivist in real life who had actually been circumcised. I have had friends in real life who were not circumcised, and they were really, really against circumcision, right? But for them, it really was because it just seems so horrific, and they don't understand it very well. They really don't. But like, when you look at the actual evidence, like, many people do not know this. Feel free to look it up. The World Health Organization has been running a circumcision campaign in sub-Saharan Africa for the past 30 years in order to reduce HIV transmission. Because one of the reasons why HIV gets transmitted so much in sub-Saharan Africa is because people are not circumcised. And it's the World Health Organization doing that. But whatever. Yeah.
So what I was just going to say is that circumcision seems like it's a healthy practice. The only part of circumcision where I've seen some skepticism, which I don't think is completely unreasonable, is the Metzitza B'Peh part, where you have some mohels who do seem to suck the dick of the baby boy.
No, they do not. Metzitza B'Peh is a whole other thing we can discuss. I will say vast majority of Jews do not do Metzitza B'Peh. And while I do know people who do practice it, it is not in any way sexual, and anyone who thinks it is sexual has problems.
No, it's not that it's sexual, but I've heard that there are sexually transmitted diseases which can occur in some Hasidic communities as a result of.
They call it sexually transmitted diseases. I believe it's either hepatitis A or hepatitis something that they talk about. And frankly, my opinion is if you want Metzitza Bepeh done on your child, you should be doing it yourself. You shouldn't. It shouldn't be the Moel doing it. But most places, that vast majority of the circumcisions I've been to, the Mohel uses a pipette. Unreasonable? How am I being unreasonable? Yes, Rav Hirsch does have a whole thing. Look, Chabad still does Metzitza Bepeh in general.
So going back a little
Yes.
bit before Denise came in, I'm wondering. I'm just thinking about Deuteronomy in my mind about how if a couple are found running off together, if he has seduced her, then
Yeah.
the parents get the privilege of saying this is a shotgun marriage, essentially. And to what extent one of the big issues with our understanding is that it is individualistic and non-communal, whereas biblical understandings of sexuality are actually not merely personally decided, where there is a say of the community as to whether or not something is permitted.
Yeah. So what?
Well, even when we're talking about teens and whatnot, what we're talking about is people making decisions separate from the community as well. It's not a situation where...
Well, yeah, morality is ultimately communal, right? Morality is in relation to other people.
Right.
This is precisely the type of thing, like, when did you stop beating your wife? First, you have to show me that circumcision counts as mutilation, and it really does not. Mutilation would be mutilation. Circumcision is not mutilation. The World Health Organization has not been on a campaign trying to circumcise adult men because they want to mutilate them. Like, go look it up. Okay, I don't understand what exactly you're saying, David.
This would have worked really great in context of what we were talking about before I had to take off my headphones for 5 minutes.
I brought down the sound.
I didn't know at that point. It actually was hurting me.
Circumcision is not a severe or disfiguring injury. Yeah.
It's just...
The vast majority of men in the United States are not disfigured. And yeah, like, if you believe, like,
is it actually the majority?
The majority of American men are circumcised, yeah. In the United States, it is very common for boys to be circumcised.
Because of Dr. Kellogg,
Yeah. And the number of men who get circumcised as adults,
Yes.
My dear friend, I hate to tell you this, but I am sure I have seen more penises than you have, and you're just plain wrong. Yeah.
Where's David?
I think he clicked off.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with you that if you're going to do it, well, the only thing is, it seems like a Mohel would be able to do it in a more effective and safe way if presumably...
Well, okay. I mean, I can explain Metzitza Bepeh. Like, 1,000 years ago, when the knife was iron and therefore it had rust on it, you had to remove the blood from the wound, and so it was perfectly normal. There's a reason why dogs and cats lick their wounds. They lick their wounds because that is the way you clean a wound the best. And so cleaning wounds, right, back before we had surgical steel, was a necessary thing regardless. So yeah, holy moly, this conversation has taken. Yeah, I don't know how long YouTube is going to allow this conversation to stay on my channel. We'll see. It hasn't been interrupted yet, but yeah, cleaning the wound in that manner was perfectly reasonable when we had no other thing. And so back then, and frankly, the reason some Jewish congregations continue to do it is because once something becomes Jewish tradition, it becomes, a lot of people are very, very unlikely to change it. Now, the vast majority of Jews no longer do Metzitza B'Peh, but whatever, to try to turn it into something sexual just shows some people have sexual problems themselves and don't know much about what it means to circumcise someone 1,000 years ago.
Yeah, I agree. And Jonathan says Kirk came into his stream asking for a status upgrade, and I don't know if he's either earned that or another 11 months in Sheol. So maybe you can answer to that.
You certainly haven't earned time in Sheol. I don't know if you've gotten much of a status upgrade. Although I can tell you've been trying to be good.
I always since you reprimanded me that one time, I always try to be good. I used to not try to be good, but ever since you reprimanded me the first time, I tried to be good.
You're a good man. Calling me too pure for something is hilarious. Unless you mean Kirk is too pure for this. I don't know.
Yeah. Actually, so I have
Yeah.
Yeah. You'll enjoy it. What I was gonna ask is do you think it would be offensive for a non-Jewish person to say I think like a Jew?
I mean, it depends how they mean it.
Well, the reason I think asked is because I think there's a sense in which if someone has sort of Talmudic, Socratic reasoning where they can question.
Yeah, if by thinking like a Jew, somebody means I think this is somebody who seems trained in Talmud, that's one thing. I mean, it depends how they mean it. Yeah, and let's put it this way. There's a reason why a lot of gay men get circumcised as adults, and they do. So like bull loves bird. Sorry, I think you just have no idea what you're talking about. Yeah.
Cal Anonymous says he's seen Nassim Taleb say this, specifically a New York Jew.
Say what exactly?
I
That
think when
somebody thinks. Well, part of the problem there is Nassim Taleb is kind of crazy. He kind of is.
I mean, he's a smart man. I'll give him that. I don't know much of Nassim Taleb. I actually haven't read him, but I posted. Did you see that video I sent where we was talking about Mandelbrot and forecasting?
I didn't see it. No. I mean, he's an interesting character, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of the few public intellectuals in America. Because when I think of public intellectuals, I think of there's Jordan Peterson, who's from Canada. There's Zizek from Slovenia, and Oliver Stone and Quentin Tarantino and filmmakers. Do celebrities count as public intellectuals?
Okay, this is such a Generation X Gen Z take, or maybe it's a millennial take. There are plenty of intellectuals who don't have YouTube channels and don't go on YouTube. Richard Posner is probably, well, he's kind of old now, but he was for a long time one of the great American intellectuals that only people who know. Pretty much any professor at Harvard or Yale or Brown, right? There's a lot more public intellectuals than people imagine. But Richard Posner wrote a book about being a public intellectual. What was Posner's book?
I don't know Richard Posner off the top of my head. Is he a law professor?
Yes.
Okay, I may have heard about him before.
Publicly Intellectuals, A Study of Decline by Richard Posner, 2001. Yeah, I mean, Thomas Sowell. Look, to be a public intellectual used to mean you got invited to speak on C-SPAN and PBS. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean there's plenty of public intellectuals, but one of the problems is that there's a lot of intellectuals yet idiots. I mean, Noam Chomsky is a brilliant linguist, but
Actually, he's the part of the problem is he's not even a brilliant linguist. Basically, all of his ideas about linguistics have actually been dispelled, and he's not very influential. I mean, public intellectuals. I highly recommend the book "Intellectuals in Society" by Thomas Sowell. As a teacher, I've learned you can't win some battles and parents will just do what they do. You can't care for a child more than a parent cares for him. Yeah, that's definitely true as a parent, as a teacher. But I think part of that is our society has kind of fallen apart. There used to be a consensus. Look, there are certain things parents need to provide their children, and if they don't, we will take that child away. And unfortunately, we don't have a reasonable understanding of that. That is news to me. I had no idea about the circumcised or non-circumcised status of the British royal family.
yeah.
Nassim, I think he kind of, yeah, he certain ideas he has are pretty silly. But I think you have to include him among public intellectuals. His Black Swan theory and Lindy, and let's see what else. His idea of the intolerant minority, despite the fact being completely wrong, all have been very influential.
Yeah. And so out of curiosity, so there's public intellectuals. Would you say there's a distinction to be made between people who are public intellectuals who are known in their field of expertise and versus people who are known but not in their expertise? Like, because there are people who are well known but outside of their area of expertise.
Yeah, I mean, the fact is, a good public intellectual should have the intellectual humility to not speak authoritatively outside their expertise, which I'm sure a lot of people would say should apply to me, and I should shut up a bit more. But the fact is that that's not how human society works. We tend to trust people in areas we are not expert at by first confirming that that person is competent in fields that we are expert at, and then that allows us to understand whether or not that person is somebody we can trust. So yeah, in other fields. So it is normal for us to trust people who are competent in one field outside their expertise.
Yeah.
And frankly, we should have, like, the first question should be, does this person have intellectual humility? And unfortunately, too often the opposite is the question we ask: is this person confident in what they say?
Yeah, and that is part of the criticism I've heard some people have of Jordan Peterson, that sometimes he does speak about things where he's not necessarily as knowledgeable about as he should be.
I mean, it's an okay criticism, but vast majority of people who criticize Jordan Peterson do so because they don't like his what he has to say, not because of some honest disagreement with him.
Yeah, definitely. And part of the reason I asked about this question of like thinking like Jew is because like, so did I tell you about the story of my conversion process when I was going through conservative Judaism before?
Kind of. You said you went to a conservative synagogue, and it was they because you were too young. They said no. I guess was that
No,
it?
I actually no, I went through the conversion process before I met the community that brought me to become a Noahide.
Aha.
But the reason I bring this up is because part of the reason I converted to Judaism, and I think this is unfortunately part of the intention of many non-Orthodox converts, is
Mm.
that I think subconsciously I thought a lot of the public intellectuals I like on YouTube are Jewish, and so this means that like, oh well, I have an affinity for this ethnic group and the history and the culture around it, but I didn't really have as much of a religious affinity, and so it felt like I had sort of somewhat, you might say, nefarious motives in that respect. But
I wouldn't say it's nefarious, but yeah, it's probably not the best motives, I guess.
yeah, I mean the main problem is that I don't know what non-Orthodox converts, because so the thing is most non-Orthodox converts to my understanding according to the halacha are not halakhically Jewish, but the problem is how do you tell, because there still seem to be
No,
some.
unless you went before an Orthodox Beit Din, you there is no question you are not Jewish.
Okay, because and the reason I bring this up as a possibility is because I've heard some rabbis say that there's some, especially specifically if the Beit Din is comprised of three Shomer Shabbat men, which may include some conservative rabbis, conservative male rabbis, that there is a possibility that the convert will become Jewish. Now, in my case, I actually didn't have the intention to keep halacha, right? So in that case, I don't think my conversion was valid, but I don't know.
I would say we generally say that unless there is an Orthodox Beit Din involved, we don't even say that there's a suffix. We don't even say that there's a doubt, because if we did, it would cause way too many problems.
Okay.
Way too many problems.
I mean, I agree. It's just, yeah.
Yeah, so like somebody might theoretically be saying there's a theoretical danger there, but ultimately, and I'm pretty sure this is Rav Moshe Feinstein's psak, that unless there is an Orthodox conversion, we don't, like with an Orthodox Beit Din, we don't say even that that it has any effect, what halachic effect whatsoever.
Yeah. And one things I'm curious about is I've had this idea, and I'm curious what your perspective is, that perhaps one of the ways is we can deal with non-Orthodox converts is for those who are sincerely like looking for Judaism and were misled. Do you believe that perhaps the Orthodox Jewish community has a role to play, and perhaps if they've studied under a former conservative synagogue, if they have a basic knowledge of Torah, that they should basically be sort of greenlit through a
No,
conversion process?
no, I think that would be a horrible mistake and would cause all kinds of confusion. Yeah.
Okay, that's fair enough.
I mean, a person's current state of knowledge is taken into consideration when the Beit Din starts talking to them. So if they actually learned something, that's great. But the fact that a conservative Beit Din said anything has no halachic ramification whatsoever.
I understand it has no halakhic ramification, but I was just thinking that pragmatically speaking, most people who go through reform conversion processes must have learned something more than your average convert coming in.
All you have to do is your normal check of seeing what that person actually knows or doesn't know.
Okay. Conversion or translation.
And I don't see it having, yeah. Uh, Jan God says, Kirk, this overthinking at 18 is going to give you your 50-year-old self much mental arthritis. That's funny. Let's see.
Adam said that he thinks that conversion should be treated like transition. The comment below that.
What'd you say, Kirk?
I said, Adam says we should treat conversion like transition, I think. People should stand in their communities and make them better instead of avoiding the pain.
Okay. I mean, conversion is important because the word Hebrew does kind of mean convert. There's no such thing as influence. There's only fortunate emergence. I'm not sure about that. Let's face it, Christian men have been traumatized by being force-fed lies and nonsense since the Edict of Thessalonica passed in 380. I have no idea what that is, but I'm sure you think it's important, Claire. 10 minutes back, and I'm giving this a thumbs up just for the excitement. Also, I vote for circumcision. Well, Dawn's vote always counts more than most people's votes. To be fair to Denise, she has cooler stories than you do. You need to tell cooler stories instead of telling others how they should organize their civilization. His biggest contribution is calling out the misuse and abuse of Gaussian distribution. I'm guessing that's Nassim Taleb. A thumbs up from Dawn is worth like 10 normal thumbs. This is true. And Jan God agrees. So it's 100 times true. Now I can't unsee two hands with only thumbs. Thanks, Cassandra. We should treat. Yeah, we already said that.
Mark Lefebvre.
Mark Lefebvre is constantly telling people to read Taleb. I already have lots of stuff to read. Honestly, I like Taleb is a terrible writer and thinks he's great, and so I don't recommend his writing. But he has some ideas which, if other people explain it to you, are actually worthwhile, including the idea of the black swan, if properly understood. My mother had to go into the mikvah again when she moved to Williamsburg, but the Rav who oversaw it told my grandparents that the original conservative conversion was fine, but they wanted to have an actual. Well, I have to say something about New York conservative conversions from like back in the 1960s. There was a time when Rav Soloveitchik was involved with conservative Judaism and was making sure that their conversions were still kosher. That is a time that has long passed. Not sure what Max is saying nope to. Who will tell you how to organize your civilization if I don't? Well, pretty much anybody. Adam, let's not discuss the images your comment have conjured, especially this. His arrogance is hard to overlook in his writing. Yeah, I'm guessing you mean Nassim Taleb.
Saul Lieberman. That's the name I know.
Who was Saul Lieberman?
I did read his Wikipedia page for what it's worth, and apparently he was a conservative rabbi who was pretty much modern Orthodox in his practice in the 1960s.
Among some of his students, the Garash, Gaon Rabbeinu Shaul, was a rabbi and Talmudic scholar. Oh, is he the one who said no female rabbis? And they said, yeah, we don't care.
I believe I've heard that he said no female rabbis.
The Lieberman Clause. The Lieberman Clause is a clause included in a ketubah created by and named after Saul Lieberman that stipulates that divorce will be adjudicated by a modern Beit Din in order to prevent the problem of the aguna. A woman not allowed to remarry religiously because she has not been granted a divorce. It was first introduced in the 1950s by rabbis in Judaism's conservative movement. My big question is, so apparently he was first cousins once removed with the Rav and Reb Chaim Kanievsky and the first cousin of the Chazon Ish. Chasheva family.
Yeah, aren't those all pretty major poskim?
They
in the
are
Orthodox
all major poskim, yes. He remarried in 1932 to Judith Lieberman, a daughter of Meir Bar Ilan, granddaughter of the Netziv, and niece of Baruch Epstein, the Torah Tamima, and the Aruch HaShulchan. Yeah, I thought so. That was the Aruch HaShulchan. Hunter College, Columbia. She served as Hebrew principal. The Liebermans had no children. Well, I guess that's his schut that at least he didn't have any children who ended up being who they were. Yeah, they waited for him to die. That's interesting. I bet your screen could be at a lower brightness and still be bright enough. I guess. I don't know. What, you don't like reading off my glasses? Is that what you're saying? He's actually very close to him. Used to visit him in Israel, and there's a lot of correspondence between them. Wow. Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it seems as though basically the conservative movement in New York back in the day was pretty close to modern orthodoxy as far as it goes.
Yeah. I mean, I know the Rav very much tried to keep them in line with the rest of Yiddishkeit. But
Well, what I find interesting is you have a conservative rabbi, not only conservative rabbi like Saul Lieberman, who says no female rabbis, and then you have open Orthodox rabbis who say yes to female rabbis.
yeah, but the open Orthodox aren't Orthodox.
Yeah, well, actually, is that the consensus now in the Jewish community?
I think it's always been the consensus. Honestly, the open Orthodox, they're just people who are culturally Orthodox. They don't actually believe in God. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And I know if Rabbi Breitowitz heard me, he would disagree. And Rabbi Breitowitz is a better person than I am. But I also think Rabbi Breitowitz is a little bit too nice sometimes.
Yeah. Well, one thing is that when I was at the conservative synagogue that I went to, was that people would tell me that modern Orthodox Judaism and conservative Judaism have more in common than modern Orthodox Judaism and Haredi Judaism. And to me, I think that's an example of how they misunderstand the relationship between culture and religion, because it's like, culturally speaking, yes, many modern Orthodox Jews and conservative Jews have quite a bit in common. But culturally speaking, the fact that modern Orthodox and conservative Jews have a lot in common in terms of, maybe sending their kids to similar synagogues because modern Orthodox and conservative might live near each other. Still, essentially speaking, if you go to a modern Orthodox synagogue and you're a conservative convert, you're going to be treated like a non-Jew, and if you are a Haredi convert, you will be treated like a Jew. So, I just think they don't understand what they're talking about.
Yeah. I remember I was talking to a Reform Jew who's very active, and she's in her 80s, right? And she'd always been Reform her entire life. And we're talking, and I start telling her about classical Reform, meaning people who are opposed to the use of Hebrew in the Bible, in the services, and to Zionism, and to keeping kosher and things like that. And Yonatan, Mashlomcha.
Doing well. Can you hear me?
Yes. And she
Great.
said to me, then how are they Jewish? And it's like, dude, this is classic Reform. being anti-Zionist, anti-Hebrew, and anti-kosher. What do you want to talk about, Jonathan?
I came in here to say that Taleb's books are actually like the best part about him. Maybe his Twitter feed is less interesting, but his or maybe interesting but dumb. But his books are good. His writing is good. What's wrong with his writing?
I every time I've tried to read him, it's been even more. How do I call it? So every time I try to read him, he. So, for example, his thing on intolerant minorities, right? He gives the example of drinks being kosher, right? And he says, "Oh, drinks are kosher. All drinks are kosher, and therefore, it's because some people won't drink something that's not kosher, whereas people who who don't keep kosher, they don't care, and that's how all drinks became kosher."
Okay.
There's a huge problem with that.
Which is
Try to find kosher grape juice. Try to find, in fact, kosher fruit juices, including like cranberry juice, etc.
okay. What about orange juice?
Orange juice is kosher because it never gets mixed with grape juice. Nobody mixes grape juice with orange juice.
I think that's the
Whereas,
example he uses. Orange
what?
juice. I remember orange juice is the example that he used.
Right, but that's because orange juice is kosher without a kosher certification. I
Yeah,
can
it's easy.
yeah, it's and that's the reason why it's kosher, because the cost to get a kosher certificate, any rabbi you ask will be like, okay, give me $5, it's kosher, because he doesn't need to do anything and you don't need to change anything.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So it's not that food that used to not be I mean, there is some sway in that some changes are sometimes made, slight changes to make things kosher for the kosher certification, but
Yep.
generally most things that are certified kosher were kosher without the certification, and zero changes were made.
Right. So I guess going back to Lev, then what's the problem?
His idea is that that things get changed by the intolerant minority, and the fact is the main reason why kosher does move the needle isn't because of the Jews who keep kosher, it's because of the vegetarians, and the vegetarians use the kosher symbols to know when something is vegetarian or not.
So I understood his point as being more of like, if you're going to serve, if you have options and you basically want to make it easy, then you just go for the least common denominator, right? So you know that like, the Jews will only do kosher. So things that are just naturally kosher that non-Jews would totally be like, yeah, that's fine too. It just that's why these things become
But they don't really. Like, that's the thing. Like, the fact is, like, the rest of the food, it's not like most of the food that gets served. It's the tiny pieces that don't really matter that it happens to. And he's very lazy. He doesn't actually test his theories, right? If what you do once you formulate a hypothesis is actually think of a test of that hypothesis and go ahead and try to test it. I've never seen him actually go ahead and do the testing part.
Yeah, I think you're he's not trying to prove as much as you're
Attributing to him.
yeah, I think so. I understood it more of just the phenomenon, and not even that like it's a tyranny, as much as it's just a description of what's going on.
But it's actually not a description of what happens, though. That's part of my problem. Like, it doesn't actually happen. Like, if it, the fact that things get certified as kosher that were already kosher is not actually moving any sort of needle.
Yeah, but will you drink orange juice if you're kosher following Jew? Will you just drink orange juice? You don't need it to be certified, right? Or would that be like
vast
just to be
majority
safe?
of people who keep kosher know. Now, so this is a whole different problem, but there are certainly Jews who don't know enough to know that, for example, orange juice doesn't require a kashrut certificate. But pretty much all Orthodox Jews know, for example, beer doesn't require it, and so like beer, scotch, pretty much most hard liquor, vodka. Nobody actually looks for a kosher certification for those things.
I gotcha. Well, we can get into love another time, but I'm a pretty big fan outside of the fact that it doesn't seem like he's I can't tell if he's not a fan of Israel or not a fan of Jews generally. I can't believe he's actually anti-Semitic, but he's certainly
His form of anti-Semitism is, I mean, let's put it this way. Like, I don't think he would show animus towards me, but he certainly has a lot of the man's ultimately a bigot, I have to say, because he believes in like judging things. He thinks he's a Bayesian rationalist and judging things by community, etc., which I think he overestimates the value of that. He's not a classical liberal. I would say that.
No. Yeah. I'm okay with that. Anyway, I'm picking up my kids. I'm a single dad for the weekend, so say prayers for me and maybe I'll stream after they go to bed later. Bye-bye.
Have fun.